China begins work on a possible Navy base in Pakistan. The US is getting serious about confronting China. And YouTube has been censoring comments that criticize the Chinese Communist Party. This is China Uncensored. I'm Chris Chappell. China may be taking steps toward building a naval base in Pakistan. I wonder if that should concern India at all. The base would be here in Gwadar. Gwadar is the site of a port that is being expanded and run by a Chinese state-owned company as part of the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. There's also a huge amount of construction in the area that's being financed with loans from Chinese state-run banks. There have been reports for years that China will build a naval base in Gwadar. Now, this Forbes article is saying that a new high-security compound in Gwadar may indicate these naval plans. Satellite images show a newly constructed high-security compound. It's being built by the China Communications Construction Company. It's mostly owned by the Chinese government. And it's a key player in Xi Jinping's Belt and Road Initiative. And the security features of this place are unusual. It has anti-vehicle C-berms, security fences, and a high wall. Sentry posts and elevated guard towers cover the perimeter between the fence and the inner wall. This suggests armed guards with rifles. The article doesn't say this is proof of a coming naval base, but it does show that the next phase of port construction is underway. And a potential naval base in Gwadar, along with an existing Chinese base in Djibouti, would give China a lot more control over the Indian Ocean. Speaking of the Chinese military, a top Chinese general has said that China will attack Taiwan if there is no other way of stopping it from becoming independent. The Communist Party has threatened to invade Taiwan before, but now the talk is more aggressive. And I really hope the Communist Party doesn't realize Taiwan is already independent, with its own government, currency, and military. Otherwise, the Communist Party might have to accept objective reality. And really, it's unfair to ask communists to do that. It's also unfair to expect the Chinese Communist Party to admit their mistakes, like that time in 1989 when they killed all those protesters near Tiananmen Square. But the people of Hong Kong haven't forgotten. Every year, they've held a vigil on June 4th to commemorate the massacre. But this year, the Hong Kong government banned the vigil. You know, because the coronavirus is very dangerous and people shouldn't gather in large groups. The people of Hong Kong felt that the ban was probably less about health and more about stopping their political protest. So they gathered anyway. Here's Victoria Park on June 4th, the traditional location for the vigil. Additional protests also popped up in other parts of Hong Kong. As they marched out of the vigil, people were chanting, "One Nation, One Hong Kong." As one protester put it on Twitter, "Great job, CCP. Your intense and unrelenting efforts to prevent Hong Kong from becoming a hotbed of revolution have turned it into a hotbed of revolution." How did the Hong Kong police react? They arrested people. It's what they do. But congratulations, Hong Kong, on being the only place ruled by China that's held a Tiananmen Square memorial for 31 years. Let's all hope you make it to 32. Speaking of the Hong Kong government, the legislature has passed that bill we told you about before, the one that criminalizes insults to the Chinese national anthem. It was pretty much inevitable, as the pro-Beijing lawmakers outnumber the pro-democracy ones. The national anthem law is a very reasonable law. The Communist Party is sensitive, and it's mean to insult them. So mean that anyone in Hong Kong who insults the Chinese national anthem now faces up to 3 years in prison. I mean, sure, the Chinese Constitution guarantees freedom of speech, but that doesn't include the freedom to make fun of the Communist Party. You may remember Chinese whistleblowing Dr. Li Wenliang. Dr. Li had been silenced for speaking out about the coronavirus, and when he died of the coronavirus, there was a big public backlash. Well, another doctor who worked at the same hospital as Dr. Li has also died of the coronavirus, Dr. Hu Weifeng, and Chinese citizens are outraged. They say Dr. Hu was sacrificed to the coronavirus. The public had watched Dr. Hu's condition deteriorate. At one point, his skin turned black because of liver dysfunction. Tragically, after that photo surfaced, Dr. Hu was evicted from his apartment. Chinese Premier Li Keqiang has some dire economic news. 600 million people in China make just $140 a month. That's less than $5 a day, which is not even enough to pay rent on a one-bedroom apartment in a mid-sized Chinese city. Now keep in mind, Premier Li Keqiang said that. And he's the man who once said China's GDP is man-made and unreliable. In other words, the Communist Party invents numbers to make itself look good. So if he's saying things are this bad, you have to suspect that means it's actually much worse. Speaking of being bad for the regime, the US has threatened to block flights by Chinese airlines. This is in response to the Chinese regime stopping US airlines from flying to China. And to block these flights, I assume Trump is going to build a sky wall. Don't worry, he'll get China to pay for it. And coming up after the break, the US is getting serious about confronting the Chinese Communist Party. Welcome back to China Uncensored. I'm Chris Chappell. Things between the US and China are getting tense. Relations are more fractured than this stock image I found on the internet. More aggressive than this image. And, okay, this is just an irresponsible way to load shipping containers. But the point is this.
US-China relations are at their worst point in living memory for a number of decades, probably since the 1970s.
Wow, since the 70s? I'd say things have gone kapow. And relations just got worse after Trump gave this press conference on May 29th just to talk about one thing.
China, China's China, 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 China's China's China, 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 China's China's China, 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 China.
28 times in 9 minutes. Trump is really going after China, and he's doing it bigly. More specifically, in the past month or so, we've seen the Trump administration take a number of increasingly serious steps that are changing the way the US is dealing with China. It's made clear in this 16-page strategic document from May 20th. The White House says that US-China diplomatic relations were established in 1979, premised on the hope that deepening engagement would spur fundamental economic and political opening in the People's Republic of China, and lead to its emergence as a constructive and responsible global stakeholder. But guess what? It didn't turn out that way. This approach underestimated the will of the Chinese Communist Party to not do any of the things it promised. How did this happen for so long?
They were able to get away with the theft like no one was able to get away with before because of past politicians and, frankly, past presidents.
No past presidents in particular. I mean, he could be talking about anyone. But the point is, the Trump administration is taking a fundamentally new approach to China and is actually following it up with meaningful action. The Trump administration has told the public about it, but the public seems to not be paying much attention. I mean, what else could be dominating the news cycle? Yeah, that's a topic for our other show, America Uncovered. Since this is China Uncensored, let's talk about some of the things the US is doing about China. First, the State Department told Congress last week that Hong Kong is no longer free. This comes after China's National People's Congress announced that they have a new solution to address the Hong Kong protests against the Chinese Communist Party. They will simply take away people's right to protest against the Chinese Communist Party. China's new national security law is a little more complex than that, but the point is, it seriously undermines Hong Kong's freedoms. And it absolutely breaks the promise Beijing had made when Hong Kong was handed to China, which is they wouldn't interfere with Hong Kong until the year 2047. If you're interested in learning more about that whole situation, check out our episode from last week. In response to Beijing taking away Hong Kong's freedoms, the Trump administration has told Beijing, fine, if you're going to rule Hong Kong like mainland China, then we're going to treat Hong Kong like mainland China. Trump is using the Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy Act, which was passed almost unanimously by Congress last year. That bill amended the Hong Kong Policy Act to give the president the ability to use executive orders to change any of the special privileges Hong Kong enjoyed under U.S. law because it was autonomous. For example, the president can put the same U.S. trade tariffs on Hong Kong that it has on mainland China. Separately, it also now allows the president to sanction specific Chinese and Hong Kong officials who are responsible for taking away Hong Kong's freedom. And Trump says he's going to do it.
The United States will also take necessary steps to sanction PRC and Hong Kong officials directly or indirectly involved in eroding Hong Kong's autonomy and just, if you take a look, absolutely smothering Hong Kong's freedom.
The second thing the Trump administration is doing is pulling the U.S. out of the World Health Organization because China has manipulated it into helping the Chinese regime cover up the coronavirus. Here's how Trump explained it.
China has total control over the World Health Organization, despite only paying $40 million per year compared to what the United States has been paying, which is approximately $450 million a year. We have detailed the reforms that it must make and engage with them directly, but they have refused to act. Because they have failed to make the requested and greatly needed reforms, we will be today terminating our relationship with the World Health Organization and redirecting those funds to other worldwide and deserving, urgent global public health needs.
Now, I just want to make clear that I would never personally say anything bad about the WHO, because YouTube doesn't like that. Moving on. The third thing the U.S. government is doing is restricting or canceling visas for Chinese students with ties to China's military universities. Some Western media have framed this as racism meets warmongering, which seems a little extreme. Sure, it would potentially affect around 3,000 students, but that's less than 1% of the roughly 360,000 Chinese students in the U.S. Because, again, it only targets students with direct ties to Chinese military universities. This has nothing to do with 99% of the students from mainland China. Not that Chinese state-run media haven't had a field day ignoring this fact. They call the new rules political persecution and racial discrimination. The fourth thing the U.S. government is doing is looking at delisting Chinese stocks from the U.S. stock markets. A recent Senate bill would require companies to certify that they are not under the control of a foreign government, which is basically aimed at China, since all large Chinese companies are connected to the Chinese Communist Party and the Chinese government. On the one hand, the Communist Party would publicly deny this, but on the other hand, they have very clearly shown they're deeply integrated with so-called private Chinese companies. A 2017 report in state-run China Daily said that Communist Party organizations exist in nearly 70% of some 1.86 million privately owned Chinese companies. And in 2018, the Chinese Communist Party issued new guidelines requiring all listed firms, at home and abroad, to include in their internal corporate guidelines an expansive role for the Communist Party. So this new bill, if it becomes law, would make it very difficult for any Chinese company to be listed on U.S. stock markets. And all the things I mentioned that the Trump administration and Congress are doing are part of a broad shift in how the U.S. treats China. No longer a strategic partner, but a strategic competitor. One that doesn't share American values, and one that has a history of breaking promises. Back in 2016, when Trump was running for office, a lot of media said Trump's tough talk on China won't change a thing. And they were right. Tough talk didn't change a thing. But the Trump administration, with growing bipartisan support in Congress, is following up that tough talk with tough action. And I think we'll be seeing more of that in the very near future. The Chinese Communist Party is not happy, as you can see from their state-run media. That's not a bad picture, but they probably should have gone with kapow. But while the US government is getting tougher on confronting the Chinese Communist Party, guess who's backing down? YouTube, where all the China Uncensored videos are hosted. Stay tuned to learn how YouTube is censoring anti-CCP comments. Welcome back to China Uncensored. I'm Chris Chappell. We all know about how the Chinese Communist Party censors the media and the internet inside China to make sure no one says anything that makes the party look bad. I, for one, am grateful, because without Chinese censorship, our entire show, China Uncensored, would have nothing to cover. And I've got good news. This kind of censorship seems to be making its way across the Pacific, directly to Silicon Valley. It turns out YouTube has been deleting comments with phrases that insult China's Communist Party. I mean, how could that happen? What a mystery. It might be unsolvable. Well, apparently, for the past 6 months, YouTube has deleted any comments with the Chinese characters for Wumao, which means 50 cents. Wumao have become the abbreviation for the 50-cent army. Those are the trolls that post pro-Communist Party comments on the internet in exchange for a small fee, supposedly 50 Chinese cents. YouTube also deleted comments with the word gongfei, or communist bandit. I didn't even know that was still a thing. Communist bandit was a slur used by Chiang Kai-shek's nationalist forces against Mao's communist guerrilla army. And it's a bad phrase that no one should ever use, especially in the comments to this video. In this video, a user posts communist bandit in Chinese beneath a YouTube video. About 15 seconds later, it gets removed. They repeated this experiment several times. YouTube was definitely censoring it. So how is it that 2 insults to the Chinese Communist Party were being automatically deleted in YouTube comments? According to a YouTube spokesperson, upon review by our teams, we have confirmed this was an error in our enforcement system, and we are working to fix it as quickly as possible. I'm not accusing YouTube of doing this on purpose, by the way, at least not without more evidence. But the idea that this very specific anti-CCP censorship could happen through an error in their enforcement system is still very worrying. For example, Communist Bandit and 50 Cent Army could have been censored because of mass flagging from Chinese internet trolls. Or the algorithm could have flagged it for other reasons. We just don't know. Another YouTube spokesperson told Ars Technica that YouTube relies on classifiers to decide which comments to delete, and that YouTube's classifiers didn't take into account the proper context. The spokesperson said she wasn't able to give more details, which is unfortunate because more details are needed. Of course, I, for one, completely trust YouTube and its parent company, Google, and I obviously wouldn't want to say or do anything that might turn their classifiers against me. Which is why I think it's unfortunate that this whole communist bandit thing has made everyone remember all the controversy about that censored search app called Dragonfly that Google was secretly working on for the Chinese market. Google says they've scrapped Project Dragonfly, by the way, and I believe them. An American company would have to be really stupid to still want to get into the Chinese market right now. And I'm definitely not saying that Google is really stupid, though it does make me wonder about some of the things that have happened to China Uncensored over the years. I mean, YouTube has been ruthlessly demonetizing videos about the Hong Kong protests and the coronavirus, two of the most sensitive issues to the Chinese Communist Party. And YouTube actually censored 3 China Uncensored videos this year, completely removing them from YouTube. WHO corruption? Some of our viewers might wonder whether that's a topic the employees at YouTube don't want people talking about. But maybe it's not YouTube employees making the decision. It could be that a large number of Chinese internet trolls gamed the system by flagging our videos so many times that they tricked YouTube's algorithm into automatically censoring us. That would at least explain why YouTube took down our videos without warning, but then once we made a big deal about this on social media, YouTube humans quietly put each video back up within an hour. But if YouTube's automatic censorship mechanisms can be triggered by internet trolls, that's a huge and dangerous issue, especially now that YouTube said in March it expected to see more content removal as a result of its reliance on machine learning instead of human moderators. This is not the first time that machine learning has caused a weird error related to Chinese censorship. Last summer, during the Hong Kong protests, Google Translate was translating the English sentence, "So sad to see Hong Kong become part of China," to "So happy to see Hong Kong become part of China" in Chinese. And as machine learning technology improves, maybe they can directly change China Uncensored too. They can reach into my show and clean up all those messy times when I said bad things about the Chinese Communist Party. I love the Chinese Communist Party. Wait, I never said that. Well, I did, but thanks for watching China Uncensored, while you still can. I'm Chris Chappell. See you next time.